My guests today are Taylor Monroe and Lacey Fickus, co-founders of Peak Academy, a microschool in Richmond, Texas, currently serving students in grades K to 8 with plans to expand to high school quite soon. Taylor and Lacey launched their microschool in August of 2022, but prior to that, both founders worked for many years in education. Taylor taught at the elementary and middle school levels for 30 years, and Lacey began working as a sign language interpreter for a large Texas public school district, and then got the itch to become a classroom teacher. She went to school, became a certified elementary teacher, and taught in public school districts in Texas, including the one where she eventually met Taylor, and the duo began planning the creation of Peak Academy. So, Taylor and Lacey, welcome to the Liberated podcast.
Thank
Thank you. We're so
you.
excited to share our story and to be with you.
I'm so excited to hear your story and have you be here. What an inspiring story so far, from what I know. I'm excited to hear the full journey from classroom teachers to founders. So, Taylor, maybe we start with you. Of what was your backstory? What got you interested in education to begin with, and what was your experience as a classroom teacher?
So I always knew that I would be a teacher one day from, playing school to visiting teacher friends, parents and going into their classrooms and playing library and all the things. So it was just always destined to be teaching and education for me. Um, I started, January. So I graduated in December of a semester late and got a job right away in January, taking over for a teacher that was retiring and probably should have many years prior. But that was a great first experience because I was a breath of fresh air for these fourth graders that I taught. And it just, my passion from then just has continued and still today has grown. And so at the elementary level, I returned home to St. Pete, Florida, where I grew up and taught at a military boarding school for a couple of years. Um, Returned back to get a master's and then back to the classroom, which is where I've always wanted to be. So that journey, again, family brought me to Texas and to a shiny and high performing school district that I was, blessed and fortunate to work in. Um, and that's where I met Lacey. So yes.
Great. Well, I want to come back to you in a moment, Taylor, but Lacey would love to hear your origin story as well, from sign language interpreter to elementary school teacher.
Yes. So when I was growing up, I can vividly recall saying, I would love to be a teacher, but I don't really excel in anything. And I had some trauma from school that kind of ingrained that notion in my head. And so my path kind of started unconventionally, and I was really passionate about sign language and the deaf community, still am. And so I started interpreting for Lubbock ISD and was put full time in a kindergarten class with an incredible teacher. And watching her impact the lives of these kids is what really just spurred me to think, okay, maybe I can figure this out. Maybe I can actually become a teacher. And so I pursued that and actually started working. My first teaching job was in inner city Houston, um, at a Title I dual language charter school in which I was one of two that didn't speak Spanish. And so it was very much a baptism by fire first year teaching experience, but I learned a lot. And it was in the spring of that year that I interviewed in Katy at the same beautiful, shiny public school. And that's where I met Taylor. And so that's kind of how the whole thing came to be.
Yeah, so maybe you could both tell me a little bit more about what your experience was like as public school teachers in these classrooms. And Lacey, you said first at a Title I program, and then at a more well-resourced school where you met Taylor. What was that experience like, especially for both of you, what you maybe imagined classroom teaching would be to the reality of it, sort of the good and the bad? Taylor, do you want to start? Yeah.
Sure. So prior to moving to Texas, I taught in a public school that was an amazing place to work. Low student teacher ratios, a lot of autonomy, a lot of fun, a lot of joy, a lot of parent support and involvement. And I moved here and got an offer for a first grade position, which is where I had spent most of my teaching. So I was super excited that this is just going to fall right into place. And what was very different from the very beginning was that here in first grade, we gave numerical grades. So that was new for me, where before everything was anecdotal and reporting progress and growth. Um, I had to, put an F on a reading paper that, sorry, this is my Google Map for school. I don't know why I did that. Um, anyway, so I was having to give failing grades on 6-year-old reading tests when I thought I was supposed to be the one teaching them to read. And
Mm.
so I was just shocked by that and thought, well, maybe kindergarten in the state of Texas is where I need to be because of the discrepancy in the push to, and so I changed to kindergarten. And then I thought, nope, we're stressing them out here too with,
Mm.
you've got to come in knowing your 100 sight words. And we have, it was just high pressure at a very young age. So what I saw almost immediately here, but has continued to grow, was just this level of anxiety in kids, stress. It was more about, do we have any grades today? Do we have any major tests today? Not, hey, I scored a home run in my baseball game last night. Nothing that kids should be talking about. I didn't remember grades of any kind in elementary school. Like I just loved it. It was school. It was fun, and so for me, from one state to another, I just saw high pressure, high stakes, testing. I mean, we had testing in my previous district and other state, but it wasn't a big deal. It was just a day on the calendar. We did not prepare all year, starting a very young age for this big high stakes test that begins in third grade. So for me, it was just this journey of watching kids change, watching parents change, parents reaching out for tutors for kids who were making 98s. Like it was just I didn't understand. So, and I'll let Lacey share her story too, but that was when I thought maybe it was a problem in the district where we were working together. I thought maybe it's just this district,
Mm.
maybe somewhere else would be different. And so we both left at the same time and went to a neighboring district. And it felt a little bit smaller at first,
Mhm.
but not really. It's the same broken system, unfortunately. So the same thing, high pressure, high stakes testing, high anxiety. So that's pretty much what I said to Lacey one day after school. I can't keep doing this.
Mm.
I cannot. So, but I'll let her share her story too. But it's been a road, but it's been a wonderful one. And all of those things had to happen for us to
Mm.
be here today,
For
right?
sure.
And so, and we have many wonderful teacher friends and administrators still working really hard in public school. So a shout out to them for sure. We're not on the anti-public school train or anything like that. It's just it wasn't working for us. We didn't fit in the box anymore. And so it was time to do something different.
Yeah, Lacey, I'll have you chime in a minute too. But I think
Oh,
what I'm struck by with your story, Taylor, and when I hear such a similar story from so many of the founders I interview is You absolutely love teaching, you love the students, you love being an educator, and it's this, as you say, sort of high stakes, standardized, test-driven system that gets in the way of that sort of joyful learning environment. And you talked about, trying to make changes and moving to a different district, seeing if it was better, and yet those same constraints remained, and so ultimately needed to build the kind of educational environment that you knew was possible. And I find that to be so inspiring. So Lacey, tell us about your story. I mean, you kind of caught the bug for teaching when you were in that
Did.
kindergarten class and then became a
Yes.
teacher. What was that experience like for you as a teacher?
So my first year of teaching, again, very much a baptism by fire, survival, just trying to stay afloat. It was all so new, and I loved everything that I learned in my teaching courses. And then when I got there, it was just, I was drowning and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't speak the same language. And I knew that I was really good at loving kids, and so that's kind of what I did. When I didn't know what to do, which was most of the time, I just loved those kids really, really well. And so that's really my biggest takeaway from my first year of teaching. That's what got me through 100% was just the kiddos and giving them a safe place and a place that we could all learn together because I was learning every bit as much, if not more than they were at that time. And so I just loved on those kids. And then when I got the job at the school where Taylor was working, it was such a stark contrast to where I was coming from. And I was so grateful. I remember her just driving to the interview, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this place is so pretty, and look at these trees and all the things." And then I walked through like the automatic double doors for the interview, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" From the Title I school that I was at, it was just such a big difference. And so I ended up getting the job, and they situated me right next to Taylor, and we were door partners. We had joining classrooms, and she graciously agreed to like mentor the new girl, which was me. And I had about 27,000 questions every single day, which she very patiently answered. And she is still the like epitome of the teacher that I wanted and want to be. And so I just wanted to soak up every bit of her passion and her expertise and her knowledge. And everything she did, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what teaching is supposed to look like. This is what it's supposed to be. And so that first year, I mean, well, both of us burned the midnight oil every Tuesday. She stayed late on Tuesdays. And so I was like, would you mind if I stayed late on Tuesdays? Because I want to learn everything that I can. And so we both stayed late, but I remember just working really, really hard and learning everything that I could possibly learn about what best practice is, what it means to differentiate, what it means to lesson plan and find good resources and all the things. And, like Taylor was saying, we thought after a few years there, even in that short amount of time, I saw a big shift.
Hmm.
Um, Even as a baby teacher, I saw it and I felt it. And just thinking, okay, this is what I thought I wanted, and this is what I thought it was supposed to feel like, but it's shifting into something that it's not supposed to be. It just did not feel right. And so
And
we,
becoming more test driven,
oh my gosh.
Lacey, and just more regimented. Okay.
Very much, yes.
Yeah.
And like Taylor was saying, like the kids had such anxiety
Mm.
over, I mean, these were second graders and they were
Yeah.
so anxious over tests and grades and all of the thing. And we were anxious because that's the magnifying glass under which we were being looked at too. And it just feels really defeating to pour everything that you have into a system that can't utilize it well. And I don't think it's necessarily anybody's fault. It's just it's a system that doesn't fit everybody. And so we ended up at a neighboring district together and happened to end up at the same school again, and which was a huge blessing and wild. And so we were just kind of always meant to work together and do life together. And so, yeah, the neighboring district felt better for a minute, but it's a system problem.
Yeah, yeah. It's a system problem. So, at what point did you start talking about the possibility of opening a school? I guess whose idea was it first? What was that beginning of that idea?
So I just have a very vivid recollection of being in my portable classroom, in the back of the school because all of our schools are bursting at
Massive.
the seams. There's never they don't build them big enough. And so even brand new schools are in portables, year two. But I remember being in there after school and a really hot car rider duty I had, and I was hot and tired and just said, I don't think I'm going to make it to the retirement age or the magic number in the state of Texas because I have not always been an educator in Texas. So, buying back my years and all of the things, that magic number was not going to hit for me until, much beyond, where anyone should probably be teaching still. So, I thought, what can I do that's different, that's still working with kids? And so you came in, another teacher came in, and we kind of just started brainstorming things and talking about what were some additional frustrations. So the things that we've shared already were there, but then also just I had sent my oldest child to college that year, and the helplessness that she kind of expressed to me, and simple things like, could you make my hair appointment, or tasks that I thought an 18-year-old who has just moved out of state for college should be able to do. But I think I started also looking at my students in that same way, that because there's such a time constraint and we're stuck to a schedule and we have to leave 20 minutes early to get to the gym because we're so far away. Yeah, we've got this much curriculum that we have to cover. Um, we did not give students the time to problem solve, to learn to tie their shoe, to open their snack, to sharpen their pencil. It was just, we just did it for them. And so I think I did that as a parent. I think that's the model she grew up in school. Um, and that message that is sent when we step in to do everything for them outside of just the teaching piece is that they're not capable. And so I wanted to change that. I wanted them to be problem solvers. We were exhausted because we were doing so much, not just the teaching piece, but also, you know, answering so many questions and solving so many problems that our students were capable of solving and taking care of themselves. So we just started kind of brainstorming. There are tons of tutoring centers and all of those kinds of things, they're everywhere here. I'm like, I don't want to do that because again, those are the families that want their child to make a 100, not, like I want to help all the kids, but then also those same families are there about tests, they want the scores and the grades. And we just wanted to do something where we had some autonomy back. I felt like all teaching is supposed to be creative, and all of that was just taken away, like slowly but surely with every passing year. It was just any kind of personal spin or, like you said, the search or the hunt for great resources or a new book to share, or like you just couldn't do it. We weren't allowed. And so, we didn't know what all this was going to look like, but we left that day determined to just get on our computers and do some research. And what that led us to was, well, you could have a daycare. And I'm like, well, no, that's not what I'm looking for. You could have this tutoring center. And then we stumbled across the term microschool, which was not something that we had ever heard of before. So we know we're late to the game, but we're early to the party here in Texas, I feel like. So yeah, we latched onto that term and dug into all of those things. So
Amazing. And when was this? I know you opened your doors in August of 2022. When was this conversation where the idea really started to take hold?
So this would have been like
February,
December,
yeah,
January of
20,
well,
well, January
December,
of 22.
yeah,
Yeah.
January of
Okay.
2022. I think
So,
maybe, yeah, December of 21, we first kind of started like, this is not working. What is happening here? So,
Well,
so you went from idea to launch relatively quickly, and a huge career shift as a result of that.
yeah.
Well, I want to hear all about that, but first, what was it that attracted you to the microschooling model specifically?
So and I actually just watched the episode that you posted with the Nevada people that did
Don
the
and Ashley
public
Slayfer.
private micro school, something or other.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. And one thing that really resonated with me is how they said that, micro school, one thing that's beautiful about micro schools is that they don't have to have a definition. Like they don't all have to look the same. They don't all have to be defined. And I think for us, like that autonomy piece of doing what we know is the right thing for kids is what really sold us and how different all of the micro schools look. And there's such a need. There's a need in our community that we're filling, but it can't just stop with us. There needs to be more micro schools need to be established to help fill the need and really be able to um, meet every child where they are. And so I think it's that autonomy piece for us that we didn't want it. We didn't want to join a franchise that already existed. We didn't want to have, like Taylor was saying, a daycare or a tutoring service because ultimately we also wanted time back with our families. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I think what ended up happening was we Googled like, what options are there for teachers who really love to teach but can't do it in the public school anymore? And that's how we kind of stumbled upon the term micro schools. And so then we just learned everything that we possibly could about it.
I think also I found a quote that said, if you've ever said to
Oh, yeah.
yourself, if I had my own school one day, then check out our resource on micro schools. And I thought, oh, I say that all the time. I have said that all the time. And so we did, and we joined a cohort that taught us a lot about the business side and kind of checking market value and all of the things. Of course, we went out of order and picked our name and colors, and that's who we are. But yes, there was no turning back. Once we kind of had our family's approval, and we put our heads together. I mean, we worked still full time that spring semester. We let our principal know fairly, well,
Early
pretty
on.
early on.
Yeah.
And you talk about shock, like you're going to what? Open
People
a
thought we were
school?
insane.
Like just like you can leave, you can go do a different profession, but like you're gonna open a school? And I'm like, yes, that's what we're going to do.
Everybody thought we were crazy.
And so, yeah, there was just no turning back. So, yeah, that launch, yes, that, and especially when I hear on your podcast or read articles about people who take, there just wasn't time. We just
Mm-mm.
had to do it right there. We had to go. Um,
And how did that feel to give up sort of the security, the paycheck, the benefits, the pension plans from being a classroom teacher? What was that like?
It was scary, but it was exciting. And like we're very like-minded on most everything. And so like Taylor was saying, like we had made up our mind and we had decided failure was not an option and
Hmm.
we were in it together. We were going to figure it out. And we did. And we were willing to do pretty much anything we needed to do in order to make it work. And I think, and I said this just yesterday, we were asked a very similar question. And I think, had we known every little bitty thing that we were going to have to conquer in order to make this work, I don't know that we could have just jumped in. I think we had to be a little bit naive to all of the things that we didn't know yet in order to just be able to move forward with it. I think that that's one reason why it did work is because we were determined, but also just naive enough to move forward.
And I would say too, my husband had seen, every year I would say, this is the new me, the new me. This school year, the new me, and I'm going to have this work-life balance figured out. And when I was approaching 30 years and it wasn't figured out, and it was probably worse than it had ever been in terms of being out of balance, um, he was willing to say whatever you need to do so that we can get a piece of you back. Um,
Hmm.
and that's kind of one thing that I talked to Lacey about when we were talking about this in the beginning was, look, I just sent my oldest off to college. My youngest is going to go in a year and a half. And I don't want your little guy who, was probably 3 at the time.
Mhm.
I don't want you to miss those years like I missed those years. And so my husband was like, Whatever, whatever." But he knew also that um, doing something out of the field of education was not ever going to work. I tried being a stay-at-home mom for a year because I that's what I thought I needed to do. And I just wasn't very good at it. I missed being in the classroom. I was an instructional coach for a time, thinking that would give me a little bit more of a balance. And again, I missed the kids, and I have had principals say, you should look into leadership. And I'm like, I just want to teach,
Yeah.
And so I think it was scary. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
absolutely scary. Um, it sounded scarier to say it out loud, I think, than it
Hmm.
felt. It felt right. It felt right always.
Everybody else was a lot more scared than we were.
So when
Hmm.
they would say, "How many students do you have?" and we said one
One
for a
one
very
full
long
student.
for a very long time. And so when you had to say that, it sounded scary, but again, it was a risk worth taking. There's nothing more expensive than regret. We didn't
Mhm.
want to look back even another year and say, "Ugh." I mean, it was a tough road that last year
Oh my
in
gosh.
our school. Just there was a big initiative in the state of Texas for a reading academy that was mandated by the state, which we actually loved.
Loved.
It was, where most people complained about having to do all of this, the modules and how time consuming it was. We
We would
loved
be
it.
texting about, oh my gosh, did you see this on this lesson? And this is so cool. And we're already doing this.
And
And
it was validating but challenging. And then we got back to school and wanted to implement the things that we had learned and we couldn't. And I thought this is so I felt like philosophically we were just at odds. It wasn't going to get better. We were the problem,
totally.
and that wasn't a good space to live in. That didn't feel good. I feel like probably our health for sure was taking
Hmm.
a beat down a little bit, just mentally and physically. So yeah,
Yeah,
it was scary, but it's been a fun adventure and all of that.
absolutely.
So
So, what were those early launch days like? You said that you started with one student, but you clearly had visions of growth and of larger success. Tell us about those early days and sort of when did you know, gosh, this is gonna work out just fine.
Um, well, our very first staff meeting was the two of us and our two husbands. And like Taylor's husband, mine was and is very supportive, but he was understandably nervous. I had not been a teacher at that point like about 10 years. And so for me to say like in my 30s like, "Oh, hey, by the way, I'm going to completely shift our life and I'm going to do this thing that nobody that we know has ever done anything like this before." My mother was super nervous. My mother-in-law was super nervous. Um, all understandable for sure. But I remember saying so many times, like, I can't really explain it. I just know that this is what we're supposed to do. But in the earliest days, we had one brave founding family who the older sister of his, I actually taught in third grade in public school. And so that was like kind of our first reach out, I guess, if you will, is we sent an email out to all of our former families and just said, hey, this is what we're doing. If you or anybody that you know would be interested in this, please reach out. We would love to meet with you. And one of my former families reached out. And so Taylor and I met them for coffee, and they basically, I mean, just I can't imagine like the bravery that they had. I mean, that just was such a huge leap of faith on their part to say, okay, we're in. It's just our little guy, and we're gonna do this together. And so we had that one brave family that entire summer, just one on our roster. And then we started our school year with three on our first day of school, two of which were homeschool hybrid students, so not full time. And we basically did that just because we were trying to reach every corner of people and kiddos that we could. And that was a pocket that we hadn't really ever considered before. Just as public school teachers, the homeschool realm was very unfamiliar for us. And so we did that just as a means to an end. And so we got two homeschool hybrid kiddos that way. But it was just our one little full-time guy for the first month and a half or so. So those were the early days. And if you ask that little guy now, what are your favorite memories of Peak? He will say, when it was just me and Miss Monroe and Miss Fickus.
Oh, and so what do you have now? How many students?
38.
Wow. Unbelievable. And it's
Yes.
K-8.
Mhm.
Are you set up that I know microschools, have different organizational structures. We talked about this on the podcast you referenced with Dawn and Ashley
Yeah.
Slafer, who co-founded the National Microschooling Center. Some microschools operate as tutoring centers for homeschoolers. Others operate as state-recognized private schools. I know in Texas it's relatively easy to start a private school as well as relatively easy to homeschool. What was your decision there in terms of structure?
Yeah, we didn't know. And so we asked and we decided to go the private school route. I think when we were doing training and meeting with different micro schools in our state, trying to just kind of learn and saw how very different they were, we kept getting the question about our niche and what was that going to be. And we were like, we just want to have a school. Like, we just want to bring joy back to learning. We want kids to be able to think and problem solve. And we just want to have a school, like Monday through Friday, focus on the reading and the writing and the math and integrate the science and the social studies and let them, be curious and have autonomy themselves. Um, but a school was what we wanted, right? And so, um, private school it is.
Yeah, and one of the common characteristics of microschools, even though they're so different and have lots of different philosophies and approaches, but one commonality is sort of this focus around individualized
Mhm.
education and meeting each learner where they're at and kind of customizing curriculum accordingly. And I love this part of your website, peakacademytexas.com. In the FAQ section, where one of the questions is, what is the curriculum that you use? And you say, after years of having district mandated curricula imposed upon us, we don't use or subscribe to a particular curriculum because we have yet to find one that meets the needs of all learners. Instead, we utilize a variety of tools, resources, programs, and software that allows us to meet our learners where they are and teach them on their individual levels. I just absolutely love that. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what that looks like in practice for the learners that you have.
Absolutely. So we operate in mixed age learning groups. We have three, we call them camps. Base camp is our youngest slash most foundational learners. And then we have Ridge Camp, which are kind of our middles. like early elementary to late elementary, depending on what they need. And then Summit are our most advanced learners. But the ages within those camps is extremely fluid and just very flexible based on need. An example of that is we have one little girl who's actually 8 years old, started in Ridge, and very quickly we knew she's ready for more. We need to move her on up to Summit. And so in Summit, our youngest is 8 and our oldest is 15. And we're able to meet the needs of our kids through adaptive software. We utilize that for reading and math. And we also supplement science and social studies with the adaptive software as well. But we do a mix of direct instruction. We do a read aloud every day with all the groups. That's kind of a non-negotiable. And we do something that we call book bundles, where we have an anchor chapter book, or the two oldest camps utilize chapter books. And so right now in Summit, we're doing Number the Stars. And so we're weaving in a lot of World War II, Nazi Germany, all of that, the history of all of that in with that anchor book. And we do that through all different media, different genres of books, poetry, all the things. And so they get exposed to a lot of different genres that way. And then their lessons that they do for reading and math are individualized through our adaptive software. And so we're able to pull small groups based on need and what they're learning. We're able to sit down with them individually and work on individual lessons with them that way. And really in real time, see exactly what they need. And we're able to meet those needs that way.
Incredible. So, what are you hearing from parents? What is attracting them to Peak Academy? It's a different way of approaching teaching and learning. What's compelling for them?
I would say a shorter school day, more sunshine and fresh air. Definitely personalized learning, and that one of my motivating factors, the particular year that I jumped ship, was a highly gifted student that I was teaching who was just, she had tried every year to be tested into the gifted and talented program, but has high test anxiety and never made the score, but is by far the most gifted learner I've ever taught.
Without a doubt.
And so she was sort of a catalyst in all of this too. And so the fact that we can take her as a sixth grader by age, and she's working on high school content and beyond in some content areas, that's attractive. You know, she's happy because she's not bored and not stuck into a box that she had to. And I would say that year I kept saying, gosh, she's really a lot. She's a lot. And she is, but she's
in the best way.
In the best way. In that scenario and in that setting, it was sit down, be quiet, because, you know, this is how it has to look and this is what we have to do. Here, like, she is just thriving. Her younger sister, they're second language learners. And so her younger sister, who would hardly speak, is a typical first grader, but is working beyond her grade level as well. And then we have kiddos that have come from other states, other places, weren't successful, you know, after COVID, and they're behind, but they're growing, right? So I think parents see that kids who take the behind kiddos who would go to school and they would have a test and then they would fail the test and then they would reteach and retest for a 70 so that they're passing. But they weren't learning. They weren't really learning, you know, at a conceptual level, with deep understanding. So they were either not performing well and having all this anxiety, or it was too easy. And so I think parents see, oh my gosh, they didn't like to go to school because it was hard, because they were behind, and that the train just kept on rolling. And here we can catch them up and we can close gaps, and and if you need to sit on the floor, that's fine. Or, you know, if you need to go read a book and take a break, that's fine, you know, because we know them so well. We know them intimately and very quickly, you know. So like our first little guy, very opposed to writing of any kind, but super into military history and monster trucks. So let's write about that, and you could tailor it instead of, when you were talking about the book bundles, like that last year, we were actually told that we couldn't teach poetry throughout the year. Like we had to wait until the spring when it's the week designated in the curriculum to teach poetry. And it just didn't make sense, right? So I think our parents love that their kids have autonomy, that they're growing no matter where they are, if they're, off the charts smart, if they're closing gaps, and that we know them. I think that that's huge for them, our families. Like they're not just a number, they're not a test score. We know what makes them tick. We can tell when they get out of the car if it's been a rough morning. Like we just know them and they know us. And so, um,
I would also say like we're pouring into them not just academically, but also on a social emotional level as well. And that's every bit as important as the academic piece. And if we're not filling the social emotional bucket, if you will, the academic piece is not going to come, right? And so we are able to, take the time and effort and attention that we need to meet those needs as well as the academic needs. And so they're flourishing across the board because, again, because we know them, because we're able to give them what they need. And so I think that's a lot of it too.
Yeah, right. People are demanding more personalization and education that they enjoy in other areas of their lives. So they're expecting that now, and thankfully, there's entrepreneurs like the two of you who are creating the learning solutions that families really want. And you're growing. I mean, not only have you expanded so quickly in just a couple of years, but you're also expanding into the high school level now. I assume because your parents don't want to leave you, they want to stay there. What does growth look like for Peak Academy? What's your plan in the coming years?
Sorry.
go ahead.
So we have hired two exceptional educators. And so we have a total of four teachers, ourselves included. And we are going to cap at 40 for at least a little while. We are in a beautiful big house that we transformed into our perfect little schoolhouse. And it sits on 2.5 acres. So we physically have room to grow, but we want to make sure that we can do what we're doing now really, really well before we expand. And so we're starting to accumulate a weight pool, which if you would have talked to us a few years ago, we would have not believed that. But we want to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our community that we have now well before we, bite off more than we can chew. And really honor the families that took this risk early on and make sure that, we're able to do this
For a long
well.
time.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah. And make
And
sure
is
that
the
it's
is the
sustainable.
high school then with the existing students, then you'll
Sure.
sort of just grow organically with that
Yeah.
cohort. That's great.
Yep.
And what is your larger sense of the microschooling movement and education entrepreneurship in Texas? Are you seeing more people doing what you're doing, or more the demand for parents and others stepping up to create those solutions?
Yes, we don't feel like we're so much on an island anymore. Maybe not right here in our immediate area, but we're having dinner on Thursday with some of the Vela people
Great.
who are, connecting founders from the general area to meet and talk and collaborate and share stories and ideas. So it's growing, and we met yesterday with some people that were just fascinated but had no idea, and then just kept saying, wow, we need more of this. And so we get a lot of calls and inquiries about, can we come and watch? Can we come and talk to you? I want to do this too. And so we're always open to that because we would have loved to have had somebody in our back pocket right here to kind of help and guide us. But I think it's coming and it's coming quickly and we're going to be there to I think beyond having what we have right now, if we could maybe take our summers to help train future entrepreneurs or just have conversations with people and kind of tell them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And most of it's been really good. So, but just that it's possible and doable. We've remained in the black. We haven't taken out any loans. We're doing well. And so, I know that that's not everyone's journey, but um, thankfully, it's been ours, and we want to share our story with people who desire to do the same thing. So,
Oh, I love that. So, as we begin to wrap up, I'd love to hear now your reflections a couple of years in, 2.5 years into running your program. What is it like to be a school founder now?
Surreal. Um, I will just randomly throughout the days grab Taylor's arm and be like, look at our school. I cannot believe that look at our school. Especially to like think back at, how we started. We started in a teeny tiny but perfect first stop for us, little office classroom that we transformed into office that we transformed into a classroom inside like a sports complex with batting cages and astroturf and soccer goals and all the things. And so it was closed during the day. So we had access to this whole space. And that's where we kind of, that was our jumping off point. And we were renting there, obviously. And then the next year we ended up in a little farmhouse, and that was a great second stop for us. And then, the everything kind of fell into place for us to acquire a permanent location, which is unbelievable still. And so it really has just been a dream come true. And a lot of times when we kind of share our story, people will be like, "Whoa, I bet y'all are tired. Whoa, y'all must work all the time." It's so much, I don't want to say easier, but it's so much better now. And yes, it's a lot of work, but it's good work, and it's work that we can see the fruit of our labor. And it's something that we're super passionate about instead of, beating our head against a wall in a system that just was not working. And not feeling like we could ever get our head above water. And so yeah, that's my experience of being a school founder.
And Taylor, you talked about looking for balance at the beginning of every school year for 30 years. Do you feel like you finally have that?
oh yeah, absolutely. What's interesting is the first year, I said, "Hey, Lacey, are we gonna have like a Thanksgiving feast or something with our kiddos?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, sure." And I'm like, "Well, like we have 2 days left. Like we just weren't, there were former teachers, us in our former lives where, we had paper chains and how many days until spring break or how many days until, because you had to get to that milestone marker to just get to the next
Mm.
phase. And so things like the end of the year sneak up
Oh
on
my
us
gosh.
because we don't feel that, right? And then that, like, yes, I was excited to have the snow days. I didn't have 5-year-olds to play with, so I enjoy it from inside. But like, it didn't feel the same, like, please, please let there be a snow day. Like, it's a place we want to be,
And it's the place our kids want to
They
be too.
do.
They literally say things like, the sooner I leave, the sooner I get to come back. And they were really actually bummed out that they couldn't come to school on the snow days. And the days leading up to extended weekends or breaks or whatever it's very different than in public school. They're like, can we please have school on the weekends? And can we please have school during summer? And we're like, we love y'all, but we also need to just like rest a minute and plan so that we can, you know, teach well. So,
And then those Sunday kind of icky feelings that, before work on a Monday and just feeling like I didn't get all the things done that I needed to get done, whether that was for, my students or laundry, whatever it was, it just felt overwhelming and daunting. Like that's just gone. Like
mhm.
it's been a huge gift of time. I can enjoy sitting on the back porch and talking about my day, not complaining about it or being frustrated about it, but sharing stories about successes or, the conversations that we've had where kids have navigated and worked through problems or whatever. So it's just very, very different. And then I think when we have families come in, we had a poetry night and our husbands were there kind of helping serve. And my husband texted our girls and was like, you won't believe what's happening here. Like you would be so proud of your mom. And all they ever saw was just me working so hard and not being there or being there and grading papers or, just, and so they feel a huge shift as well in that I'm able to go to Parents Weekend at college and enjoy it and be present and not be stressed with subplans and all of the things. And so, yes, the balance is for sure back. And I think it's just a family kind of adventure too,
Hmm.
like our husbands are up here, tinkering and fixing and that it's been, I think they know that we're happy, much happier, and that makes them happy too. So
I love that. You're happier, your students are happier, their
yes,
parents are happier.
yeah,
I just hope more and more people realize what education can be, the possibilities
yes.
for this joyful learning, and you're creating it, which is so exciting. And I hope so many more people hear your story and become inspired by you and decide to give it a go. And if they want to reach out to you, you said you sort of wish you had some of these mentors to rely upon. But if others listening or watching are, again, inspired by your story and want to connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
So they can reach us. Our website is peakacademytexas.com. All of our social media handles, is that what they are? Is slash Peak Academy Texas. So that's Facebook, and Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. And then the only one that's different is Twitter or X, which is Academy, the number two, and Peak. And then through our website and through all of our social media, they can send messages or they can get our emails and reach out that way or by phone if they want to. So
Amazing. Well, it's been so wonderful to hear your story. I'm sure you've inspired many more to follow in your footsteps. I look forward to following your progress. And Taylor and Lacey, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.